you action figure enthusiasts out there, JC here with another TNI news video. Now this one's probably going to be a long one and is really kind of a follow-up to a video I did about a month ago. Hopefully you did watch that video. But in that video I talked about possible coming changes to the YouTube platform and how they could have drastic effects on the action figure collecting community here on YouTube. So while there really hasn't been any new additional information that has come to light on the matter, I've been seeing a lot of kind of what I would consider to be misconceptions or misunderstandings and even some confusion on who it's actually going to affect. Now, to be honest, we don't know exactly how much of an impact and exactly who it's going to affect, just because YouTube and Google, the parent company of YouTube, has been very vague on the subject. They put out a brief statement about these changes that are coming, and which I'm going to go over here in a minute. Now, if you didn't watch my last video about this and you haven't really been following, and you're wondering, well, what are we talking about? Well, basically about a month ago, YouTube was fined and Google was fined a fine of $170 million from the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, for Privacy Act violations in regards to how they basically collect data on minors who watch videos on YouTube. Because of the fine, even though for you and I, $170 million is quite a bit of money, in the eyes of Google, it's not really a lot of money. But because that fine happened, basically they saw that they were, had potential to getting even greater fines. So I guess they decided to implement changes to try and prevent that from happening. But again, I've been seeing what I view are probably misconceptions and such. And so I wanted to go over the official statement from Google about this and then give you my reasoning on who and how and why this is going to affect people. Now, again, I might be off base a little bit here on some of this stuff, but I'm going to lay it out to you so hopefully you can follow it. And, I think you'll find that my thinking is pretty logical. Okay, so first of all, let me read the statement. I will put a link to this statement. It's up on the official YouTube blog, so you can read it yourself if you want to. And so I'm going to read the statement over, and then we'll kind of break it down as to what and how this is going to happen. Got to put my reading glasses on so I can actually see the screen. Okay, so new data practices for children's content on YouTube. We are changing how we treat data for children's content on YouTube, starting in about 4 months, which again, we'll put it, we're talking January timeframe. We will treat data from anyone watching children's content on YouTube as coming from a child, regardless of the age of the user. Now, that's a big deal, regardless of who you think your targeted audience is. A lot of people think because their audience isn't made for kids that they think they're going to be safe from this, but based on that statement, I don't think so. But before we'll go back to that, let me finish reading the statement. This means that we will limit data collection and use on videos made for kids only to what is needed to support the operation of the service. We will also stop servicing personalized ads on this content entirely. Now, that's another very big deal. And even if you're somebody who really doesn't make money on YouTube, it's still probably going to drastically affect you, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. And some features will no longer be available on this type of content, like comments and notifications. Now, that's another big deal, but that one's pretty self-explanatory. In order to identify content made for kids, creators will be required to tell us when their content falls in this category, and we'll also use machine learning to find videos that clearly target young audiences. For example, those that have an emphasis on kids' characters, themes, toys, and games. Now, that last sentence is a very broad, seems like it's a very broad stroke that is going to drastically affect a lot of people, a lot of YouTube creators here on YouTube. Because, and this is where is, in fact, this is where the most vagueness seems to be, because, again, a kid's character can be anything from Spider-Man from Marvel to Batman from DC to Mario from Nintendo. Any kind of video game character could probably be deemed as a kid's character. And it's such a broad spectrum that could be affected that, you have to wonder, is it really going to be that broad? Toys, obviously, and that's where I'm going to be focusing my thoughts on here, because that's what this channel deals with. Action figures, yes, but action figures are, by most are deemed toys. And then games, which again, very broad spectrum. Definitely I would think it would affect things like Fortnite and Minecraft. I don't know why, but like whenever my nieces come and visit, they will spend hours just watching videos of people playing Minecraft. It's mind-boggling to me why they find that entertaining, but nevertheless they do. So I got to figure that channels like that are also going to be affected by this. But again, because this is a channel that deals with action figures, that's where my emphasis is. That's where I'm going to be focusing my thoughts on. Okay. So let's go back to that initial statement here. So starting in about 4 months, again, January, we will treat data from anyone watching children's content on YouTube as coming from a child, regardless of the age of the user. Now, this is important because I think, including myself, when I initially talked about this, I felt like, well, because my channel doesn't, my targeted demographic of viewer is not kids, it's adult action figure collectors, I hopefully won't have to worry about this. But based on this statement, it sounds like I am. Because what they're essentially saying is they don't really care what my targeted demographic is. They don't care what the age of my viewer is. If I'm dealing with content that is deemed as kids appropriate, which they list as toys, which is action figures, I'm going to be lumped in with this, and this is going to drastically affect my channel. And that goes for anybody who does any kind of toy hunt, toy collecting, toy unboxing, toy review, action figure review. It doesn't matter if it's a Hot Toys, it's still a toy, and I think you're going to be affected. Customs, dioramas, doesn't matter. If you've got toys of some type in your video, action figures, you're probably going to be affected by this based on what I'm reading here. And they don't care that your target audience, again, they don't care about the age of your viewer. They just are going to hit anybody that is dealing with content that is deemed kid-friendly, essentially. Now, I think the reason, some of you, are like, why would that be? Why are they going to lump in channels that are, that don't really cater to kids? Why are they going to lump in channels? And I think it's because from a practical standpoint, it's not terribly feasible to determine on their end who is an actual young kid watching YouTube and who's not. And the reason why I say that, I know a lot of people will go to their analytics and say, look, I don't have young kids watching my videos. But the problem is, if you look at your analytics, the youngest age they even list on there are 13 years old, I think. And the problem is that young kids, I think most young kids who watch YouTube videos are doing it through their parents or their older siblings' channels and not their own. Most young kids don't have their own YouTube channel. And so if you've got a 5-year-old watching a video on YouTube through their parents' channel, on your analytics, that's going to come through as an adult watching your content. So I think they're just looking at all content that might be appealing to kids and going to, because they're trying to protect their ass financially and legally, they're going to throw that content in regardless of the age of your actual user. So that's my thinking on that subject. So again, anyone dealing with content that deals with any kind of action figure that is, a type of toy, I think is going to be affected by this, assuming, based on if they actually implement these changes as they've stated on their blog. Okay, now, another misconception or that I kind of see here is I see a lot of people going down to this section in the paragraph that says, in order to identify content made for kids, creators will be required to tell us when their content falls in this category. Now, I see people saying, well, and I think what they're expecting is there'll be some kind of box, which this is likely the case. There'll be, when you upload a video, there'll be a box you can check that says, my content falls into this, category of kids-oriented content. And again, people are going back to the idea of, well, my content's not made for kids and therefore I'm not going to need to check that box. I think is a misconception, because again, going back to that initial statement, what they're saying is they don't care what your age of your viewer is. They want you to check that box if your content is dealing with toys, if it's dealing with action figures. So essentially what they're saying is, regardless of who's watching your video, they're going to, if you're dealing with toy content of any type, they're going to expect you to check that box. And if you don't, you're going to be in violation of their policy. So I don't really think that's going to save anybody. And again, I've seen a lot of people who seem to think there is, and I could be wrong, but just again, reading based on what I'm reading here, I don't see it that way. Now, if best case scenario, if I'm wrong on that, and they will allow people who are catering to the adult action figure collecting community, will allow them to opt out of being lumped in with these creators that are creating content for kids. The second part of that sentence that says, and will also use machine learning to find videos that clearly target young audiences, you're going to end up getting dinged no matter what, because their machine, especially starting out, is going to see that you're talking about some type of toy, and therefore it's going to lump you in automatically, and you're going to have to go through constant rigmarole to get your video, if your videos get demonetized or what, and your channel gets dinged or whatever, because of this computer learning, which we've seen in the past has not been terribly effective, has lumped in a lot of channels, during the ad apocalypse and stuff, lumped in a lot of channels that really shouldn't have been lumped in, and those creators had to go through a huge process of, basically filing complaints and such, and getting reversals on their channels. So best case scenario here is that even if we end up getting exempt from this stuff, we're still going to get dinged initially by their computers that are trying to learn this stuff. I think even if you had humans doing this, you'd have a lot of humans that aren't tied into the action figure adult collecting community who would have a hard time distinguishing between content that is made for an adult action figure collector and that's made for a young kid. So I wouldn't, even like I said, even if I'm wrong on the first part here, I wouldn't expect that you're going to get out of this unscathed. Now, another misconception that I wanted to kind of address is, I hear a lot is, well, I don't make money. A lot of people want to focus in on the targeted advertising, and they take that to mean that they're not going to be able to get any money from YouTube. That people monetize who run ads on their YouTube get money. But the fact is that probably 98% of people who make content geared towards the action figure adult collector, they don't have a big enough presence on YouTube, and I include myself in that really is going, if your videos got demonetized, that's going to have a drastic effect. It might be a pain in the ass for some people might make enough money that it helps support their hobby, but I don't, it's not going to be the end of the world. And so I hear a lot of people saying, well, I don't really make any money on YouTube, so if they can't run targeted ads on my channel, it's really not going to be a big deal. But here's the thing, and in order to really understand this point, you have to kind of understand what Google and YouTube actually are. If I asked you what is Google, your probably initial response would be they're a search engine. And that's certainly how Google started out, but that's not really what Google is. Google is an ad agency. Their revenue is made, their business is servicing ads. Now, they certainly use their search engine as a tool to better target those ads, which is what has made them such a successful ad network and ad agency. But they are an ad agency. Same thing with YouTube. The purpose of YouTube, maybe when it initially started with the original creators, the idea was to create a platform that people could express themselves and create user-oriented content for just the sake of creating user-oriented content. But that is not what YouTube is today. YouTube is a method used to basically service ads. They're using your content that is essentially cheap content that they don't have to pay for, and they're using that content to service ads on. So when they sit there and say they can no longer run targeted advertising, and targeted advertising is the primary source of advertising that Google runs, there might be little crumbs of non-targeted ads that get run where where really not much money is made. But any real money that's made from a targeted ad comes, or from advertising comes from a targeted ad. So look at it this way. You're a retailer that sells action figures and you want to start running ads to promote your business and the selling of those action figures, okay? And so say you have a room of people over here that consist of, say, 1,000 people. But those 1,000 people are not people who are actually interested in action figures. They could care less about action figures and aren't going to ever buy an action figure. But there's 1,000 of them over in this room. Over here, you've got a room of 20 people who are action figure collectors. Now, initially, if you ask that advertiser where they want to run their ad, if they were told, well, we've got 1,000 people over here and we've got 20 people over here, which room do you want to run your ad in? You might think they would go with the room with 1,000 people. More people, more chances to make sales. But that's not really how advertising works. It's not about the number of eyeballs. It's about the number of targeted eyeballs. So even though you only have 20 people over in this room, the fact that they are 20 people who are actually interested in action figures, the advertiser is far more likely going to make a sale from these people, not these people over here. They're essentially flushing them. If they advertised in this room with 1,000 people that aren't interested in action figures, they might as well just flush their advertising dollar down the toilet because it's not going to do them any good. So this is really the room that they're going to want to focus their advertising on. So when they sit there and say, when YouTube sits there and says they can no longer run targeted ads on your channel, regardless of how much money you make or don't make personally on YouTube, that means that they can no longer, YouTube themselves can no longer make any money from the content that you're essentially uploading on their platform. So you go from being a benefit from creating cheap content for them to run ads on to essentially being a burden to them, because now you're essentially using their services and providing something that they can't monetize. Now, you might say that's a dickish move, but that's business, and it's not really unrealistic to expect a business to provide a service that they can't benefit from. So, again, I hate to burst this bubble that YouTube is this utopia of free, user-generated content, so people can express themselves. And that goes for all social media platforms these days, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. These are all large corporations, and they're there to make money, and they're using your content that you upload on these social media platforms in order to essentially make that money. And if they can't do it anymore, they're not going to be you're more trouble than you're worth. So even if you're not specifically making money on, or much money on YouTube yourself, you're still part of a larger pool that they can run their targeted ads on, that they are making money off of. And if they can no longer do that because the FTC is forbidding them from doing so because kids might be watching your channel, you're no longer a use to them. And that's why I kind of feel like they're going to, one of the things they state here is they're going to be turning off notifications and comments, because honestly, I don't see, from the FTC standpoint, as long as they're not running ads on your videos anymore, that should be enough to appease them. So why the need to shut off your comments and notifications? If you want to see this in play, you can actually turn ads off on your YouTube channel. And I guarantee you, if you don't run ads on your YouTube channel, if you don't allow YouTube to run ads, you're going to find it much harder to build your channel, to get views on your channel, and to grow it. Because if they can't run ads, if they can't monetize that content, they're not interested in building that up for you. And again, if you don't allow them to run ads, it is going to be much harder for you to actually build up a YouTube channel. So you can kind of test that if you want now. You can turn the ads, if you have ads running on your channel, you can turn that off, and you're going to find that if you do that, it's going to be much harder for your channel to get noticed and to get eyeballs on it. So, but again, going back to my point, so I feel like they're going to turn off the comments and the notifications so that people don't see your channel, essentially so that you no longer have motivation to upload content no matter what. Because while a lot of you don't actually do it for money, I do think most of you do it for the gratification, the notoriety, the ability to communicate with your fellow collectors, even if you've got like only 20 people watching your video, that's still, for a lot of people, I think that's enough to kind of build you up and incentivize you from doing another video and so on and so forth. And so if you really take that away, I mean, I hear a lot of people say, well, I just do it for the fun. I just make videos for fun. Well, if that's truly the case, then this won't bother you at all. Because if you're just doing it because you find it fun to make videos, you'll be able to continue to make videos. But if you're really doing it because you want people to watch your videos and you want people to interact with your videos and you want your channel to grow, then it's going to affect you. And again, I think you got to be honest with yourself. Why are you really doing these videos? Why are you putting so much energy and time into creating this content? Yeah, you may not be doing it for money per se, but I have a feeling that there is some other motivation than just purely for fun, just because you like to film videos and then have nobody watch it. Okay, so just a quick couple of other things that I wanted to address. I see a lot of people that are like, well, just start saying cuss words in your video and that'll make it so they don't hit you with this. And no, that's not going to work. It doesn't matter how many times you say shit, fuck, or whatever. In fact, the honest to God truth is, if you're sitting there cussing in your videos all the time, especially if there's no real reason for it, that's probably going to attract kids more than anything, because most adults, when you're sitting there cussing for no reason, they kind of look at you like you're stupid. But kids, because kids think cussing's cool, when you say fucking shit, then they're like, oh, cool, man, I'm going to watch this video. You must be cool. So, no. Cussing in your videos is not going to, I don't think is going to save you from this. And going back to, it's not who you're trying to target your videos for, it's what it is you're actually covering. So the only way that I see, again, based on what I'm reading in this blog, that's going to get you around this is if you just change the type of content. If you decide to start making videos about vacuum cleaners, then you'll be okay. But, it doesn't matter if you put profanity. In fact, if you put profanity in your videos, that's going to get you dinged for a whole nother reason. And you're going to have the same problem even if this wasn't the case, because they don't like it when you cuss in their videos. And like I said, they'll penalize you for that. So I wish I had some better solutions for you guys. And, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that this isn't as bad as it seems, that, maybe they'll change their minds. There are channels out there that do really make a lot of money for YouTube, like Ryan's Toys Reviews, who, this definitely should hit up. I don't see any way they could save a Ryan's Toys channel and then ding somebody like me or you. Because again, the FTC penalty is going against that channel that is definitely gearing their content towards young kids. But again, that's a very big channel. That channel dwarfs any action figure toy reviewer. My cat doesn't really like Ryan's Toys Review, but that's a whole different story. But definitely that channel has a lot of views, and that channel makes a lot of money. And there are other like I said, the video games, action figures, comic book characters. I mean, the impact that this could have, based on what is listed in this blog post is astronomical. And it's really kind of hard to believe that they're actually going to hit everybody up that they're kind of indicating in this blog post. So definitely keeping fingers crossed, as I know many others. I've talked to other YouTube creators, big and small out there, and everybody's worried. Even if they haven't talked about it yet, believe me, they're worried. But hopefully, a lot of people, I think, are just hoping that this is getting blown out of proportion, that Google is just, maybe to throw off the FTC, I don't know. But and at the end of the day, coming January, they're not actually going to implement changes quite as it seems like they're picturing in this blog post. But because this is all we have at this point, that's what I'm addressing here today. So love to hear your thoughts on everything I talked about. Let me know in the comment section below. Subscribe to the channel while you can. And of course, like the video and hit the bell notification again while you can. Not that it might matter in a couple months anyway. But until next time, guys, my cat's leaving, and I'll catch you later.